Hey honey, the CHIPS Act was just signed into law. Oh, that's lovely, dear. That means we won't need to get any more tortilla chips.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Luis Discusses Everything. As you can see, I'm fully ready for this video and to dissect all the minute details of the topic at hand. Today's topic is about the CHIPS Act. As you saw in this little bit there, you can see that it's not that many people would know about it, as with most bills that pass the Senate or the House of Representatives. So the exact bill that we're talking about, or the exact news story that we're talking about, is Biden signs a $280 billion CHIPS Act in bid to boost U.S. over China. So this bill was actually passed by the Senate and the House of Representatives just a while ago, like a couple of weeks ago, but it's only yesterday that Biden signed it into law. It reached the president's desk. And so I'm going to go step by step and discuss the most important details of the bill that actually matter to you, that will affect you directly as a U.S. Resident. And I'll use AP News. I'll put all the sources and information on either the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen. So what is the CHIPS Act and what is the purpose of it, right? The CHIPS Act is basically a huge incentive for monetary incentive for corporations that make semiconductor chips, right? And the purpose of this CHIPS Act is to incentivize those corporations to manufacture chips in the United States, albeit with a monetary incentive, right? The reason for the necessity of this CHIPS Act is because actually most of the chips in the world, I think akin to 70% to 80% of the chips in the world, are actually manufactured outside of the United States by one company called TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Corporation. That's not to say that they're making bad chips, it's just that it poses a geopolitical risk, right? If most of the chips are made outside of the United States, that means in a calamity in which Taiwan is either invaded by China or a huge natural disaster happens in Taiwan, you lose 80% of the manufacturing capacity of all chips in the world, right? The United States is not the only one that's dependent on Taiwan for chips, but is certainly the one that has the highest risk in terms of like the highest dependency, right? So what's in the CHIPS Act? The legislation sets aside $52 billion, especially to bolster the U.S. computer chip sector. They want to incentivize corporations in the United States, or U.S. corporations, to actually make their chips in the United States. Which corporations? Like, this would benefit companies like Intel. It would benefit companies like NVIDIA. It would benefit, well, if they make their chips in the US, right? So before I get into the actual details of the CHIPS Act, let me share how we got here, essentially. According to the AP News article that I'm sharing, it says the bill has been more than a year in the making, but finally cleared both chambers of Congress late last month with significant bipartisan margins. So that means Republican and Democrat. The Senate passed it 63 to 33, like I mentioned before, with 17 GOP senators supporting it, while the House quickly followed suit with 243 in favor and 187 votes against. That include 24 House Republicans in favor. So yeah, again, this article emphasizes the bipartisan nature of it, but yeah. Even though party leaders began urging their ranks to vote against it after Democrats advanced a separate sweeping bill focused on climate and healthcare. That's a separate story, but essentially what that little bit means is that there was a lot of whipping against the bill after the Republicans found out that the Democrats were going to go through with the eventual passage of the Anti-Inflation Act, which I discussed in another video. If you want to see, the link is over here on the left-hand corner of the screen. Now that I gave you a little bit of synopsis of the history of the bill, let me just share like what are the most important details that will affect you, right? So this bill will directly affect companies like Micron. Quote, Micron, a leading U.S. chip manufacturer, will announce a $40 billion plan to boost domestic production of memory chips, while Qualcomm and Global Foundries will unveil a $4.2 billion expansion on the upstate New York chip plant, a critical component in countering the influence of a rising China and ensure the U.S. can maintain a competitive edge against Beijing, particularly in semiconductor manufacturing. So, in other words, this whole bill's intent is to give a bunch of money to these corporations so that they can be convinced to not offshore their talent to other countries. Now, you would ask yourself, like, why do we need to incentivize companies to actually make stuff in the United States? Well, it's because compared to other countries, wages in the United States are quote unquote high. That incentivizes companies to produce their manufacturing capacity outside of the United States, because in comparison, the wages of workers there are much lower than the wages in the United States. So why is this important for you? Is because, number one, the camera, the television, the computer, your fridge, everything that is electronic in your home has some form of semiconductor chip. In the event that there is war with China, or China goes to war with Taiwan, or there's a natural disaster in Taiwan, or a humongous, cataclysm in that Taiwanese island, and their chip foundries are destroyed, we're going to have a crisis on our hands, right? We're going to have a limited amount of semiconductor chips available to us. We already have a chip shortage to begin with, right? Because of the supply chain constraints, because we ship most of our products from other countries instead of producing it here at home. That means is that if there is any delay in that supply chain, we are not going to have the basic components of everything that we consume. That's why you have, for example, Ford, GM, even Tesla delaying some of their models because they're lacking chips, right? And that means you as the consumer, when you go and buy those products, I'm not saying you're going to buy a Tesla, but let's say you buy a Ford vehicle, or let's say you buy a computer, let's say you buy another phone. That phone might take twice or three times as long or months to get to your door. That's what happened in 2020. That doesn't happen if you have production in your own country and enough production to satisfy demand. But that's component number one, the number one reason you should care. Number two reason is, if a lot of these companies are building factories in the United States, that means that there are going to be a lot of jobs that were previously outsourced in the United States. Not only are you getting a more steady supply of semiconductor chips in our own country, but you're also going to have a considerable increase of high-paying jobs. Not only are you satisfying the consumer, but you're also contributing to an increase in overall salary and overall job availability in your own country. So you can see how this benefits the United States in a twofold manner, right? The only big downside to this is that, yes, this bill takes effect immediately in the sense that, okay, yeah, you have the funds available, but a lot of these companies are just starting to build these factories, right? Micron just started to build a factory. Qualcomm, Intel just started to put even dirt on the ground that they're, So, and these factories take upwards of 10 years to build. So yeah, it's a good thing we passed this, but then again, you're going to take 10 years to build it. So it's kind of like a trade-off, right? Yes, a lot of money incentivizing the production of manufacturing plants in the United States, but it's going to take a while. Similar story, rings a couple bells, right? Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share the channel with anybody that you know. Recommendations as to new videos, if you agree with me or disagree with me with the benefits of this bill. If you have any comments whatsoever, please leave it in the comments section. Share it again with your friends. Watch the other videos on the top left corner, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.